Welcome, everyone. My name is Mary Koshy. I'm with the Office for Diversity and Inclusion, and welcome to our speaker series on Disability Awareness Month. We have with us today Jonathan Taylor. He is the president of the Hearing Loss Association of America. He will be speaking to us this afternoon about living a full life with hearing loss. So I invite you to please stay engaged during the session, put your questions and comments in the chat box. Mr. Taylor will probably be talking maybe for like 20-25 minutes, and then we have plenty of time for questions and answers. So with that said, I think we want this to be an interactive session. So please use the chat, and we will definitely take questions at the end of the.
I am to be here today to represent the New York City chapter of the Hearing Loss Association and to help increase awareness of hearing loss. Before I talk about HLAA, I thought I would like to give you a brief background about my hearing loss. It's likely that my hearing loss resulted from an inherited vulnerability to the loud sounds that I encountered during my career as a freelance trombonist. When I first got my hearing aids in 1991, I only wore them in the privacy of my home to protect that career because freelance musicians do not show up at work wearing hearing aids. In 1997, when my hearing loss had progressed from mild to severe, and I also had difficulty discriminating pitches, I made the decision to stop performing and to wear my hearing aids full time. And so I wore them in public. During my career, I performed with the Brooklyn Philharmonic, the Paul Taylor Dance Company, the New York Philharmonic, Orpheus Chamber Ensemble, more than 20 Broadway shows, and numerous dance companies. In the years since I stopped performing, I've continued to work with orchestras in an administrative capacity. However, the music business has been in a downward spiral. So with little work available, I returned to school in 2011 at the CUNY Graduate Center, and in 2015, I earned a PhD in developmental psychology. My hearing loss posed some challenges when I was in school. Because most classes were small, I was generally able to manage by sitting near the professor and placing a microphone in the middle of the table to hear classmates. The one large class I took was a challenging statistics course in hierarchical linear modeling. After being lost for the first few weeks, I approached the professor who agreed to wear my microphone around his neck, which made all the difference. For the past 7 years, I worked at Hunter doing research on factors that might have an impact on student success as measured by retention and graduation rates. Because meetings were a struggle, I asked for a device that would stream discussion directly to my hearing aids. It turned out to be difficult to find the correct office to help me. And when I finally did, they purchased the wrong device. So I ended up buying my own devices using captioning from my phone and microphones that paired with my hearing aids. I found that, like at Hunter, most people are eager to help, but may not always understand the needs of those with hearing loss. The commencement ceremony when I received my PhD was at Avery Fisher Hall at Lincoln Center with thousands attending. As an accommodation for the deaf, sign language interpreting there was a sign language interpreter on stage. While valuable for the deaf, the vast majority find sign language interpreting useless. About 98% of those with hearing loss, do not use signs. The fact that signing is often a default accommodation is a reflection of the kind of ignorance that HLAA has worked to correct. Have you gotten my slides yet?
No, I'm afraid if it's a large.
Okay, I'll just keep talking then.
Yeah,
and it's estimated that about 48 million Americans have hearing loss. In 1819, Thomas Jefferson wrote, "My hearing is distinct in particular conversation, but confused when several voices cross each other, which unfits me for the society of the table." The social isolation described by Jefferson may lead to depression and to dementia. As has been noted by the Alzheimer's Association, the brain loves company. Hearing loss can have serious health implications that go well beyond the social. It has been found that loss of brain tissue may result from hearing loss. It is also associated with poor balance and falls, hospitalization, and early mortality. The question of balance is a personal concern because I have found myself struggling with my balance in the recent years. And that is apparently attributable to inner ear problems. Older adults with hearing loss are 2.39 times as likely to fall as those with normal hearing. These health sequelae are more common among the elderly. Since joining in 2016, HLAA has become an important part of my life. Through the chapter, I've learned many things and made new friends that help me live a full life with hearing loss. The mission of the HLAA New York City chapter is manifold, to serve as an extension of the national organization by promoting the HLAA philosophy of self-help while specifically addressing access, advocacy, awareness, and education. To educate people with hearing loss, their families, coworkers, teachers, hearing healthcare providers, industry, government, and others about hearing loss and its impact. To advocate for communication access with legislators, public agencies, and private companies. To work to develop options for people with hearing loss and to open doors for them, particularly in New York City. To promote public and private programs that provide accommodations allowing people with hearing loss to participate effectively in the mainstream of society, and to establish working relationships with professionals and professional organizations in the hearing healthcare field in New York City. The challenges of hearing loss have been exacerbated by the pandemic, but they are not new and they will remain with us when COVID-19 is just a bad memory. In New York City, we were required to wear face coverings in public and to practice social distancing to slow the spread of the disease. With these public health measures emerge new challenges. Masks are a barrier to effective communication for people with hearing loss, who may rely at least in part on lip reading. When we go to the supermarket or the pharmacy, cashiers wear masks and stand behind plexiglass shields, which muffle sounds and hide lips, making it impossible for people with hearing loss to communicate. If we go to the doctor or to the hospital, we cannot bring someone with us to help communicate with doctors and staffs who are wearing masks and may or may not be educated about the needs of people with hearing loss or about technology that will facilitate meetings. I'd like to give you a couple of examples. Early on during the pandemic, one of our board members, an older woman with severe hearing loss, fell and broke her arm. Okay, what did you just do, Mary? I have all this. You're sharing my screen now?
Yes, it just came through.
So, or is this you presenting me or my?
This is you, so.
Okay. You can go to this is okay. You can keep going. Okay, here we are. You can go back one. Um, uh, no, that's good. Uh, it, the example I was starting to give was an older woman who's on our board fell and broke her arm and went to the hospital, and she had to be unaccompanied. The doctor was wearing a mask and refused to let her use her uh, captioning app on her phone. So, which she said was a violation of hospital policy. So she was really quite bewildered there and upset and couldn't understand what was being said to her. Afterwards, when HLAA contacted hospital administrators, they were appropriately apologetic and promised to better educate the staff about the needs of people with hearing loss. In June, I went to a hospital to get a brain MRI. I was told I couldn't wear my hearing aids into the room, that I had to give them up before then. Uh, I tried to explain that I would not hear the explanations of instructions that the staff would give me, but they still insisted. I did realize, of course, that I could not wear the hearing aids in the MRI machine, but didn't understand why this was any different from my bringing my glasses into the room, which I was permitted to do. That the policy made no sense to me. Fortunately, there were not a great deal of instructions to understand. It was all okay. The other issue I faced there that also made no sense to me was that I asked them when I was making the appointment in person, that I asked them to send me an email confirming the time and date. They said they couldn't send me an email. I tried to get them to understand that I was not hearing the staff behind the screen wearing masks as well as I would understand in email, but nevertheless, they said they couldn't do that. I've had numerous surgeries in recent years. When my wife accompanies me, I've sometimes found that physicians talk to her rather than to me, although I am the patient. I think it's important that doctors and staffs, while I understand that it's easier to speak to the hearing person, that the person they really need to communicate with and who really needs to understand is the patient. Uh, you can click. Okay, thank you. For many of us, our work must be completed remotely. If we want to socialize, we must do it remotely. I'm sure that many of you have been spending hours teleconferencing on Google Meet and Zoom. Although not as good as live captions, the captions on Google Meet are a big help to many of us. Zoom, which is the most widely used platform at this point, has not started providing captioning. When Zoom isn't captioned, I put my phone next to the computer screen and I turn on my Otter app, which will caption. The Hearing Loss Association has been, Mary, you can click, I think. The Hearing Loss Association has been in the forefront of advocacy efforts to help face these challenges. The New York City chapter has advocated at hospitals, including Mount Sinai, for the use of caption devices, clear masks, and hearing loops, and for the training of staff to understand and facilitate the communications that may be problematic for those of us with hearing loss. We've advocated for similar accommodations in police stations, and we have a petition with more than 50,000 signatures to get Zoom to provide captioning. Okay, Mary? Okay, these are pictures of the two masks that are currently available. The one on the left has a window in it that allows you to see lips, which are important for people with hearing loss who are using lip reading. It also allows you to see facial expressions. The one on the right is actually FDA approved and is a clear mask put out by a company called Clear Mask. And these, I think, are very useful and some things that people should be aware of. I don't really expect that in certain medical situations that doctors will find these offer adequate protection. I recently had a root canal and the dentist was wearing a surgical mask, a mask on top of that, and a head helmet. And I would not, which I certainly understand, I would not expect them to use these, but these are still valuable and people should be aware of them. Mary? It is our hope that technologies such as captioning will become the new normal even after the threat of COVID has disappeared. At that time, I look forward to returning to live theater and to the movies. But those of us with hearing loss can only fully enjoy those performances when there's captioning and or a hearing loop in the venue. On Broadway, the HLA's advocacy has led to caption performances and the installation of hearing loops in theaters. We've also advocated for hearing loops in concert auditoriums and for at movies to have, many of them now have closed captions. We are currently advocating for open captions at certain performances. One of our board members is on the board of an organization which also advocates for museum accessibility. Mary? Okay, another area of advocacy is transit accessibility, looping subway stations, captioning announcements on trains and buses. I'm sure that many people without hearing loss have difficulty understanding announcements on subways and on buses. In 2015, Dr. Morton Ann Gernsbacher, a professor at the University of Wisconsin, published an article entitled Video Captions Benefit Everyone. She reviewed more than 100 studies in which she found that people with normal hearing also better comprehend and retain more information when it has been captioned than when it was only presented orally. When my wife and I attended an open caption performance of Hamilton a few years ago, many audience members who did not have hearing aids were glued to the screen that displayed captions because they were also having trouble understanding lyrics and were very appreciative of the captions. Mary? At meetings in the New York City chapter, in addition to learning from audiologists about hearing aids and assistive devices, members discover ways to engage in cultural opportunities such as theater, museums, and movies We learn about transit accessibility and emergency and safety procedures, which is an important topic for people with hearing loss who may not hear alarms that go off. We also learn to improve our ability to, overall, we learn to improve the ability to cope with the challenges of hearing loss. This education is critical to the ability to lead full lives and to avoid the health consequences that often accompany hearing loss. Of great importance is the camaraderie and social engagement that meetings provide, something that is often missing in the lives of people who do not have normal hearing. Mary? This fall, our monthly meetings are all online. We have already heard speakers discuss our rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act and the genetics of hearing loss. At our next meeting, November 17th, Sharon Kujawa, an auditory neuroscientist and clinician, will discuss her research, which focuses on primary causes of hearing loss, like noise exposure and aging, aiming to reveal the types of cellular damage that result. In recent years, this work has given rise to the concept of hidden hearing loss, declines in hearing that are not revealed by the threshold audiogram, but are well known to those who experience them. December, we will have a very special presentation, one that's close to my heart. In honor of the 250th anniversary of Beethoven's birth, we will have a special presentation performance by a former professional viola player, Betty Houck, who lost her career as her hearing deteriorated. Betty will describe the roller coaster journey that's taken her from playing at the White House for President Kennedy and being in a string court with Yo-Yo Ma to experience moderate to severe hearing loss later in life. As a special bonus, we will also hear Betty perform. Those of you who are interested can find information about these presentations on our chapter website, hearinglossnyc.org. Mary? I've learned many things through HLAA. It's through the chapter that I learned about Google Meet and Otter and many other apps that have helped me. But HLAA has provided more than educational benefits. I've made new friends who understand hearing loss because they face the same daily challenges that I face. I found it uplifting to attend meetings where everything is captioned and are in rooms where there are hearing loops. One of the most important things we learn through HLAA from other members is that there is no stigma to hearing loss. We learn to have the confidence to advocate for ourselves, to ask for accommodations like captioning when necessary. When you consult a doctor, for example, it is vital that you understand what he or she is telling you, and accuracy is important. And we've learned to ask for those accommodations. A couple of years ago, I presented some of my research at a conference of the American Educational Research Association, which included many different sessions on a wide variety of topics. The association provided a personal captioner at 8 different sessions for me at no cost. They were happy to do it, but it would not have happened if I hadn't known to ask. That is one of the important lessons I've learned. In general, people will provide what I need if I ask, but they will have no way of knowing if I keep quiet. One of the lectures I attended on a difficult statistical topic was given by a Chinese man with a thick accent. The captioner sat in the back of the room and gave me an iPad on which the captions were displayed. I was the envy of all those who sat near me, wondering what app I was using, because they too were having a difficult time. One of the most important areas for being assertive is with your audiologist. Hearing aids are used by only 1 in 5 people who would benefit. Many people purchase hearing aids and never use them, possibly because they're not satisfied when they first try them. In 30 years, as my hearing loss has progressed, I've used increasingly powerful hearing aids. It's rare for me to be happy with their performance on the first day. It's of course necessary to become accustomed to the new sounds you're hearing, but it's also likely that the hearing aids will need adjustments to programs, to tweak the programs. Although the programs are initially based on audiograms, those audiograms only reveal hearing of pure tones in a soundproofed acoustically dead room, which is very different from the real world. So if your hearing aids don't meet your expectations, I would recommend making a list of the situations where they're failing you, where they're falling short. Then return to your audiologist for adjustments. At the end of my father's life, he was extremely deaf. I took him to the audiologist to optimize the programming on his hearing aids, and when he was asked what the problem was, all he could say was, I don't like the sound. That doesn't give the audiologist anything to work with. When I go, I may tell the audiologist things like too much bass, more treble, the volume's okay, but it lacks clarity, or the sound is too percussive. And a word about expectations. It is a cliche, but true, that hearing aids are not like eyeglasses, which essentially enable normal vision. Hearing aids will not give you 20/20 hearing. My hearing loss has progressed over the years, and my loss is now considered severe to profound. Because my audiologist has said that I've reached the limit of the benefits that I can expect from my hearing aids, I'm now planning surgery for a cochlear implant, which will replace the damaged cells in my inner ear with electrodes. This is an enormous life-changing decision. Many of my HLA friends have implants, and I've reached out to them for advice and have found comfort in hearing their success stories. Mary? So, do you think you have a hearing loss? Many people might notice that they have a hard time hearing in certain situations, but they don't do anything about it, at least not immediately. On average, people wait 7 years after the onset of hearing problems to get hearing aids. Hearing loss has been shown to negatively impact nearly every aspect of our lives, so it is important not to wait. As with most medical conditions, the earlier hearing loss is detected, the better the chances are that something can be done to help. A college classmate said to me that he would be embarrassed to wear a hearing aid, that it would make him look old or infirm. I explained to him that not wearing a hearing aid, he might be more embarrassed when he responded inappropriately to questions or in conversations which he had not accurately heard. So, how can you tell if you have a hearing loss? Do you often ask people to repeat themselves? Do you have trouble hearing at parties or restaurants? Do you often think others are mumbling? Do you fail to hear someone talking from behind you? Do you turn up the volume on the TV or car radio? Do you have difficulty hearing on the phone? These are all questions that you should be asking yourself, and you can use these as a guide. But if you suspect a hearing loss or just have a little difficulty hearing every now and then, it's important for you to see a hearing healthcare medical professional for a full evaluation. Next. So what can you do to prevent hearing loss? So I'm happy to be here because October is Disability Awareness Month, but October is actually also Protect Your Hearing Month. So what can you do? Most hearing loss is a result of exposure to loud sounds. I live near a hospital and I'm frequently assaulted by loud sirens from ambulances. When this happens, I mute my hearing aids. I did the same thing when I went to an NBA game a few years ago. So you can buy inexpensive earplugs that you can use in situations where you'll be exposed to extremely loud or for loud levels of sound for a long time. You can turn down the level on your headphones and turn down the level for your kids who often will feel invulnerable to this problem. And another thing you can do is to ask your doctor whether any of the medications you're taking are ototoxic, that is damaging to hearing. Mary, next. Okay, so how can you help? If you are a hearing person, there's some conversational tips I'd like to pass along. Catherine Boughton, who preceded me as president of the New York City chapter, has written two excellent books about hearing loss. The title of one is Shouting Won't Help. When clarity is the problem, speaking slowly is often more helpful than shouting. Another board member, Ruth Bernstein, often tells people, don't speak until you see the whites of my eyes. Get the person's attention. I don't have good peripheral hearing. If I'm not focused on the speaker, I probably will not understand. I may not even be aware that anyone is speaking to me. Don't cover your mouth. People with hearing loss depend on reading lips, so covering your mouth is really a problem. If a person does not understand what you're saying after a couple of repetitions, try rephrasing, try using different words. There may be specific sounds that that person is having a hard time hearing. Uh, okay, and don't say never mind or it's not important. Saying those things to someone with hearing loss makes them feel isolated, and it may lead to them faking hearing more and not asking for clarifications. But the responsibility isn't all on the person with normal hearing. the person who has a hearing loss also has some responsibilities in this. So what can you do if you're hard of hearing? Don't be shy about your hearing. Tell people that you have a loss. Don't call out to someone in another room. I'm guilty of this all the time. I call out to my wife in the other room knowing that she will hear me, forgetting that I will not have a chance and I will not understand anything she says in reply. You can let people know what you didn't hear rather than expecting they will repeat an entire conversation for you. You can say, I've heard everything up until. And lastly, I would say that something that some people don't understand is that hearing loss, trying to hear, it creates fatigue. My wife has a very large family. At holiday dinners pre-pandemic, there were often 18 to 20 people sitting around a table with multiple simultaneous conversations, which my captioning apps and my microphones cannot isolate, creating a jumbled word salad. This can be extremely tiring. So it's okay to excuse yourself when you become too tired and to leave the room. I would suggest that if dessert is chocolate, you wait till after dessert. Mary? So if you have a hearing loss, I would encourage you to join HLAA. If you know someone who has, and someone you care about has a hearing loss, they might consider joining HLAA. It's not expensive, just $45 for an individual membership that includes both chapter and national membership and a subscription to the HLAA magazine, Hearing Life. And it's easy to join. You can just go to our website, hearinglossnewyorkcity.org. Thank you for listening. Mary?